What's up, guys? It's your boy Rich here with Endado's C1V2, and it's in 39 millimeters, 46.7 from lug to lug, 10.7 millimeters tall, and it uses a 20 millimeter lug strap. So Endado is a newcomer to the watch space, and the owner or founder is Ted Verderame. And I got to know Ted during the process of a virtual microlux last weekend, and he is such a pleasant, a very, very nice guy. So if you're wondering, like I was, since his last name is Verderame, how did he come up with the name Endado? Well, I thought we would hear from Ted during his interview at Virtual Microlux explaining how he came up with his branding. Here's Ted in his own words.
Yeah, so my last name is Sicilian. I'm Italian on my father's side and German and Irish on my mother's. But I lived and studied in Rome while I was in college, and I love Italy. And so when we were trying to decide on a name, we were going to have trouble trademarking a few of our early ideas. So I had to kind of wipe the board clean and start over. And Endado is a portmanteau. It's three Italian words and a Latin word that we chopped and changed to find the right fit to finally land on Endado. But it all zeroes in on our mindset and what we're trying to do. And everything, plays off timing a little bit and the right time to do something and to act on what's been a dream of mine for a long time. So while it added a few weeks of extra work and a little trademark work, we know we came to the right conclusion by starting fresh and getting to Endado.
So I think that works. I think Endado is very classy. I think it's a very cool name. It's not ego driven. It's a very, Ted's approach was on the bolder side, right? What I mean by that is, as a newcomer to the watch space, he didn't come up or introduce us with a safe bet, which would be a diver's watch, because we know that divers are extremely popular in the US. Instead, he gave us this sort of a hybrid, I would say, between a dress watch and a field watch. Certainly 10.7 millimeters is not a chunky watch, but it's not ultra thin to make it a dress watch. So that's why I would consider this more of a hybrid and a great daily wear, especially with jeans and a tee, which is how I typically dress and how I would rock this watch. So, kudos for Ted for coming up with something maybe a little bit fortuitous, because I definitely think this is a nice welcome addition to the sports watches. The very first thing that caught my attention has to be this dial. So this has this red sunray effect, and we can see the sunray doing its thing in the different lighting conditions. But as the design is what I would describe as somewhat of a hybrid, like I said, between a dress watch and a field watch, so is the dial. So we can see these lines stretching from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock and down to 6 o'clock. Half of that has these sort of a sandwich effect, dial effect right there, and the top portion is more of the sunray effect. Although we do see that sunray effect consistently throughout the dial. Just a very pleasant color. It has applied markers, and it says automatic above 6 o'clock. So what is the movement that is powering the C1V2? Well, again, any newcomer has a lot of options for their movements, right? Whether it's a Miyota or an NH35 or a Sellita, or sometimes even the ETA 2824, which is powering this watch. So, it's an interesting choice why Ted chose this movement. So again, I thought we would hear from Ted on why he chose the ETA 2824 over the Sellita 200.
ETA 2824. Towards the end of 2019, there was a lot of uncertainty over whether ETA would have to continue to supply or not. They were in a lot of things coming out of the courts in Switzerland. So that was a long process, and it probably slowed us down a little bit, but it was worth it. We wanted to come to market with ETAs in the stable. I realized, that Sellita is so similar at this point, but we felt like as a new brand trying to enter this part of the market, it was important to have the ETA name behind the opening collection.
So, Ted is a very determined person. He knew what he wanted, and he wanted a 2824. And I think that, for a lot of reasons makes sense. It's certainly a reliable movement. We know that. But it's also, I think, a credibility issue. And I think that's why Ted wanted to come out of the gates swinging, really quickly, instead of building up or working up to a Swiss movement. Certainly he wanted to have a Swiss-made watch as his first debut. So a nice striking Very nice striking red. But he also has what is the C1V1, a very similar watch, except this is has more of a forced green dial. But there are some other subtle differences as well, starting with the dial. So if we can get a good look at side by side. So while I said on the C1V2 with the red, we can see that sandwich portion kind of dial stretched from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock and then downwards towards 6 o'clock, and then smoother along the top. Here on a C1V1, it has that same sandwich kind of pattern or cutout throughout the dial instead of just the bottom portion. So nice options for us. I think this green is actually pretty cool, but I'm focusing more on the C1V2 because I think this red just stands out really nicely. They both use a calfskin strap. Both are powered also by the 2824. And I want to spend some time talking about the presentation here because, it's very well thought out. Ted thought of a lot of things in coming up with his first line. So this is the presentation, and it's in leather, not faux leather. And there's the zipper. So it actually stores 2 watches, one up there, and then what separates from the second watch is this nicely padded, and you can see it is really nicely padded, a nice leather pillow, so 2 watches will never come into contact with each other. Very well thought out. Certainly not a cheap full leather presentation, a nice real leather presentation. So, again, I think Ted just, I think he hit the ground running nicely with this welcome edition, especially if we have in a very crowded segment of sport watches. The retail price is $1,200 for either the C1V1 or the C1V2. And for that, I think we're getting a very solidly made watch. And if Swiss made is important to you, well then, he has you covered with this because this is a Swiss made watch. So I think this is going to be a really great option for someone who isn't looking for another diver's watch or another chronograph. So thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll see you soon.